We're back here on the John Fourcade Show, and one of our John Fourcade specials this week, a 2015 F-150 Super Cab, $26,997. Again, a 2015 F-150 Super Cab, $26,997. You won't find a better price than right here at Veterans Ford. We're back here on the John Fourcade Show, and this is one of the features we do every week, and looking at some of the top players for the 2016 NFL Draft, and it is heavy on defensive linemen, but don't blink. Those guys will go pretty quickly come draft day. We're going to go look at my top defensive ends for the 2016 NFL Draft. Right off the top, Joey Bosa, who I think will be a top 3 or 4 pick. DeForest Buckner from Oregon, I think will be a top 10 pick. Shaq Lawson, I think, is probably a top 10 or 11 pick in this draft. Saints pick 12. So what does that do? Jerron Reed, we talked a little bit about him, the versatile defensive lineman from Alabama. Jonathan Bullard, more of a late first-round pick. Kevin Dodd, who had an unbelievable football game against Alabama in the national championship game. Emmanuel Oba from Oklahoma State, and Ole Miss took him to lunch pretty good once he went up against Laramie Tunsil. And I think a young man the Saints might take a long look at in round 2, Bronson Kafusi from Brigham Young. Bronson's dad's the defensive line coach, coaches defensive line at Brigham Young. He was recruited as a basketball player, John, and so he's grown into that big body, but he looks like a big power forward, to be honest with you. 6'7", 275 pounds today. You look at that long list, all those guys for me are top 45 players. So you see that list of 8 defensive ends all gone in 45 picks. It goes to show you what the NFL is all about. It's about having a quarterback and putting that quarterback on his keister.
Well, Mike, we look at your list, and it was a phenomenal list you put up there. And let's be honest here, if you're drafting 12th and there's a list of 10 guys on there that you think could be playing in the NFL right now, you know all those guys will not be going before you get your pick. That's the New Orleans Saints, because teams are looking at quarterbacks, receivers, O-linemen. So when you're number 12 coming up there, and you got a list of 6, 7 guys in the defensive end category who can rush the passer, and you pass on these guys, you're in for a long, 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 long year, because you don't pass on one of these guys. There's too many players, Mike, and those guys are on the board for a reason. Like, you picked them. Top 10, top 12, top 50, top 45, whatever it may be. If you're in the top of something, there's a reason why, and you should not pass on these guys. And there's a list there. I don't think you can go wrong with any one of the 5 or 6 guys that I saw in there. There's a few other ones that I'd have to put down the line, like you said, but there's about 5 or 6 right now. I'm snatching them up.
Another thing, too, is you see why Clemson was in the national championship game. Not only because of that quarterback, they got 2 defensive ends in the top 7 defensive ends in that list. Shaq Lawson, who's a maybe, and I mean a maybe, that would be there at 12, and I think he would certainly give the Saints some edge pressure. Kevin Dodd's a young man, too, kind of a 1.5-year starter, but boy, did the light come on, and he beat the stew out of that poor right tackle for Alabama. I mean, he's still trying to block Kevin Dodd, so you got some talented defensive ends. Now we're going to look at my list of the top defensive tackles in this draft class, and it is every bit as impressive as the ends. Right off the top, A'Shawn Robinson, who I think will be a pick. If he's there at 12, I think that's who the Saints will go for. If not, you'll have to look around. Robert Kimducci, who would have been, I think, a top 10 pick because of his off-the-field issues, has dropped back. He's a team's pick now. Andrew Billings, a big run stuffer from Baylor. Kenny Clark, real impressive athlete from UCLA. Austin Johnson from Penn State, late first, early second. Vernon Butler, who we've talked a lot about from Louisiana Tech. Sheldon Rankins, who's a short, squatty guy, but real effective from Louisville. And John, a guy you saw play a lot. Chris Jones from Mississippi State. And Chris is a bit of an enigma type player, because when he's on, there's not a lot of guys that can put up what he can do. But he's been a bit of a stock market player for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, and he's down the list like you have him down the list, and I'm sure he's down the list on other people's deals. But I want to talk about the top 3 you had on there. Alabama's man, Ole Miss's guy, and Baylor. Those 3 guys right there. Not just the fact that they play inside. I'll say this much, those guys I believe can also play on the outside edge. I know I seen Robert Kamichi up at Ole Miss do it when he first got there, and he ate himself into a defensive tackle. But if he can at least shed a few pounds, I think he can step outside for it. But those three guys right there were pretty dominating in college football, and the Saints want to go with that route too. They can go that route as well. Defensive end, defensive tackle, guys who can get to the quarterback, and that's the key: getting to the quarterback. Whatever they line up at, Mike, wherever they produce them on the defensive side of football, they got to get to the quarterback, and that's the main thing that the Saints and a bunch of other NFL teams are saying. You know, we got to have a pass rusher, somebody who can make havoc in the backfield. Not necessarily getting the sack, but putting havoc, like what happened in the Denver game, make the quarterback move around, don't get his feet set. If you could do that, that's the big key to it. The Saints haven't really got anybody up front and inside that has been able to do that.
You know, one of the things, too, is the Carolina Panthers took a lot of heat, and when they picked Starr and also Quan, back-to-back picks, same year at defensive tackle, people say, what are they doing that for? When you see how they are built, John, man, today, who wouldn't trade? There's not a better defensive tackle combination in pro football than what you see in Starr and Quan. And listen, I would have no issue if the Saints back-to-back picks defensive linemen in this draft class, because they really, I think that's where it starts. It starts up front. It might sound old-fashioned, but it's effective. And look where the Panthers are today.
Totally agree with that. They got to shore up their defense. Now, I know we're talking about the Saints right now. You got to shore up your defense. And look how bad the defense has been the last 4 years. I mean, you've been 25, 26, up to 32. That's horrible defense. You got to find, other than secondary guys, you know, you can get away with the linebackers. You can find them basically off the street if you wanted to, free agency. But you got to find in the draft young guys that can rush the passer. There's too many players right now. If they went back-to-back, D-tackle, D-end, I'm all for that. Just get somebody to rush the quarterback.
I agree, and I think if it's, a lot of people look at the edge as the rush, but give me a guy that can blow up the middle. You being a former quarterback, what's the worst thing you didn't want to see? A guy right in your face.
You are so right there. That's the problem the Saints had last year in their center's position, because they were getting to Drew too quick, too fast. You put pressure up the middle on a quarterback, Mike, I guarantee you, when he has to move to the outside, oh, guess what he runs into? A defensive end. So if you can get pressure in the middle, make a quarterback move a little bit, you've already done your job right there. Then you can get time to cover and time to get to the quarterback. I believe that you got to have good pressure up front as well as on the edge. Go for two guys. I'm all for that.
You noticed on that list, you know, Clemson had two defensive ends on there, certainly with Shaq Lawson and Kevin Dodd. Alabama, Jerron Reed, however you want to put him at defensive end, defensive tackle, A'Shawn Robinson. That's a reason why, a big reason why, both those teams win the national championship game. We'll be back with more of the John Fourcade Show, sponsored each week by Veterans Ford.